I am Roma, and I work with the RISE, which is the Radical Youth Space for Education. And I am inheriting a more powerful feminist legacy. We're sold through brands, history classes, and popular imagination a strand of feminism that starts with the suffragette and ends with the girl boss, the complete, perfect emancipation of women. Brands now use feminist ideas and slogans to sell us products to change our bodies, to buy into whiteness, and to support violent supply chains that exploit our siblings across the world. This story also separates us from the rest of struggle, labelling issues either feminist or not feminist, and prioritising individual comfort and choice over collective liberation. Now, there's just a couple of things I want to acknowledge before I begin. Some of them have already been acknowledged. Firstly, the stories I'm about to tell you are of white European heritage women. Of course, we should be looking to and taking inspiration from non-white women who have been the backbone of many of our movements for generations. But I highlight these because we are miseducated into believing that the people we must take inspiration from are overwhelmingly supportive of the white supremacist status quo. All of the stories I'm about to tell you are portraying white supremacy and working for global liberation. But because they're all of this particular heritage, I chose this because I believe that as a town, we are majority European heritage. And so these are the legacies that we must be taking on. They prove to us that we can fight for more than the movements that we have now. Secondly, I know mainstream UK-based feminism is currently, as has already been acknowledged, ripping itself apart, trying to invalidate the experience and existence of trans people. I want to be firm in that I am uncompromisingly supportive of my trans siblings, and anyone trying to bring this debate here, as has already been said, I would firmly suggest that you analyse your whiteness, your internalised patriarchy, and allow yourself the space to learn something. I want to tell you a different story. Elizabeth Hayrick was an abolitionist campaigner in the early 19th century. After the Slave Trade Act of 1807, many prominent campaigners, such as William Wilberforce, believed that enslavement would gradually die out. But a decade later, it was clear that would not happen. In 1824, she published a pamphlet titled Immediate, Not Gradual Abolition, criticising the assumptions of other campaigners. She organised a sugar boycott in Leicester, going door to door, and encouraged other women to get involved, successfully involving a huge proportion of the population. She was a founding member of the Birmingham Ladies' Society for the Relief of Slaves in 1825, the first ladies' anti-slavery society. It is here that many women who went on to organise for the vote learnt their organising skills, setting up the women's movement to take flight. And while I spotlight her, I do not want us pretending she leafleted all of Leicester alone. This was a collective effort, as the whole abolitionist struggle was. I want to imagine a Stroud that is taking on her legacy to actively organise for solidarity for colonised peoples. There is a boycott right now on Israeli goods and other companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. I want to imagine a Stroud, and in embracing this legacy, we make Stroud an apartheid-free zone, and in doing so, learn the skills needed to meet our needs. I want to tell you another story. June Stephen was one of the London recruits who, in the depths of South African apartheid, travelled from the UK to Africa to carry out covert missions on behalf of the ANC and other resistance forces. June only died in 2022, and in a letter to her daughter, the president of the ANC Veterans League said she was an expert driver in hazardous conditions. She showed immense fortitude, nerve, and courage. She maintained a safe house in Swaziland with her husband and was involved in the undercover transport of leaflets and literature and collection of enemy information. There are many June Stephens, both in struggle with the ANC and in the noble history of people's resistance. Jessie Donaldson has a similar story, a Welsh schoolteacher who travelled to the US, set up safe houses along the Underground Railroad during enslavement, and taught nearly 3 people how to speak English to evade a recapture. I want to imagine a Stroud where we all carry the bravery of June Stephens, and all like her to betray our whiteness, our Western privilege, and to join the resistance struggle with no illusions of what it will take to free ourselves and our whole global family from the shackles of imperialism. I'm going to tell you another story. Sylvia Pankhurst. Now you'll recognise this name. I shouted it out when we were going through the list. But of the Pankhurst family, she refused to stop at women's suffrage. She, along with the East London branches she founded, was expelled from the WSPU, the main suffragette organisation, in 1914 for their labour activism. The outbreak of the Russian Revolution in 1917, she began to work in earnest for workers' power, visiting Italy, Germany, and Holland to meet with other socialists. After disagreeing with Lenin on the direction that British socialists should take, she smuggled herself to Russia after the confiscation of her passport to confront him at a convention. I really love that story. She championed Ethiopia's right to be free from colonization when fascist Italy invaded in 1935. She was active in the cause for Ethiopia's sovereignty for the rest of her life, and upon her death was honoured with an Ethiopian state funeral. The MI5 archives hold a file from 1948 dedicated to muzzling the tiresome Miss Sylvia Pankhurst. I really hope they have a file on me out of that one day. I want us to imagine a Stroud and a UK, a world where every woman can see that the liberation of women cannot happen without class struggle, without victory over imperialism and the sovereignty of all peoples. This very hall is, I believe, quite a good place to start. Reclaiming our collective spaces to be in community is a very important first step to this. And this space was also once confined to someone's imagination. And then today I came in for lunch and stayed the afternoon with the toddler I look after, and used the space and the quiet to write this. What next then? As all of the stories I've told you today demonstrate, we must organise. What I am imagining is women's caucuses in a new democratic institution that seeks to engage everyone in the ultimate question of how we are living together. I am imagining women talking to women across divides within Stroud, outside of, going and doing the work that June Stevens and Jessie Donaldson were doing. I'm imagining a Stroud and a women's movement within it that knows that the way to emancipation is planet repairs. The overlap of cognitive, reparatory, and environmental justice. I'm going to explain that more. Gender inequality and an ownership of women is one of the oldest disrepairs that we have, and we have been handed a duty to repair it. It is cognitive justice that tells us that we as women must discover the ways of knowing that were ripped from us over centuries of patriarchy, during the witch trials, and through generations of isolation. Reparatory justice that tells us to liberate ourselves from harmful systems that seek to control our bodies. Environmental justice that tells us to repair our relationship with Mother Earth and stop the plundering. I do not want us to look upon this work as a burden, but as our way of contributing to our human family. As the women of the Kurdish struggle say, we have to initiate a revolution within the revolution. In January, we hosted a Korfa and Djibouti, Ghanaian women who are organising for planet repairs at Lode Nyanza University. There are ongoing discussions about how we can work together to advance women's organising in both contexts, here and in Ghana. In December, they have elections, and we will be organising with them to build a people's observatory to prevent violence as the democratic process plays out. I'm imagining a women's organisation that is ready for this, to work with them and other women to ensure that they will be able to meet the needs of their community. Later this year, we will hopefully be hosting a study visit of some women from the Macarena in Peru, a women's union of indigenous and working women with over 126,000 women. I'm imagining a women's movement that is ready to welcome them, and I'm imagining a women's movement that is as powerful as them. Can you even imagine that many people as part of a women's union for indigenous and artisanal creators? That is... makes me feel tingly when I think about it. This week, sister member Robin, who is my friend, has been with a powerful Peoples to Peoples delegation in the Sahel. This Sunday, we are holding a global conference at the Centre for Science and Art to speak with the other members of the delegation on the last few days of that trip. They've been meeting with organisers, government officials, and students to discuss how we can be in solidarity with their revolutions. The new governments of the Sahel are taking on a legacy that is powerful and exciting. Thomas Sankara, the past president of Burkina Faso, stood powerfully with the women of the community as they emancipated themselves. And it looks like the new leader, Ibrahim Traore, will be continuing these programs and ensuring that the women of the Sahel are enabled to organize for power. Taking on this legacy is life-giving. I am imagining a Stroud and a women's movement where we know that we are not isolated in this struggle, where we stand with our Kurdish siblings, our Palestinian siblings, our Peruvian siblings, our Ghanaian siblings, our whole global family. We have been given a narrative through our schools, through our society, and brands that use narratives of liberation to get us to buy things that we don't need. When this is our narrative, we miss our ties to liberatory movements that will truly bring about not only the emancipation of women, but the emancipation of humanity. I want to imagine a feminist movement that is deeply rooted into these liberatory movements, into our global family, and into what is needed to emancipate the world. Thank you.